In a small northern town, nestled by the sea, Barrow was where submarine building was born to be. From the very first sub to our future, the industry has become our Barrow's core. So we want to tell you its historical journey, all that came before. Through our achievements came our struggles, and in true Barrovian style, we'll tell it like it is. We want to continue to share our pride for a while. This film is a dedication to all the people who have contributed to building Barrow submarines, fought and manned. Without your work, we could not tell this story. It goes hand in hand.
14th of April, 1886. The Barrow Shipbuilding Company launched the very first Barrow-Built submarine. Its name was Nordenfeldt 1. The coal-powered boat was named after its financier, Thorsten Nordenfeldt, but this wouldn't be the only one. Using a second design of inventor Reverend George Garrett, we built Nordenfeldt 2 the following year. Nordenfeldt 1 and 2 were sold onto navies in Turkey and Russia, you might be surprised to hear. Unbeknown to anyone at the time, these 30-metre-long submersible vessels would be the first in over a century-long line. So it took a Swedish industrialist to begin this historical story, but it was an Irish inventor's designs that would result in true Barrovian glory. We move along to 1901. Now the shipyard was under the ownership of Vickers and Sons, and Barrow's first submarine order from British Admiralty. Named after John Holland, the designer, who hated the English, ironically. HMS Holland 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. Teardrop-like subs that the Royal Navy hoped would thrive. However, with all inventions, they had their troubles, instabilities, fickleness in rough seas. But they would become the blueprint, the ancestor of every submarine in the world yet to be.
The Hollands were hit and miss, but inspired the Admiralty so much, they wanted to invest in a new class of subs. Based on the Holland, but with a full conning tower, the first all British design. Longer, more powerful with a diesel engine, the A-class would lead the line. HMS A1 to A13 filled the order book to at least 1905. Now the yard's growing workforce needed a place to live and to thrive. They needed homes to raise families, a place to lay their roots down. So the company bought land, built houses on Walney, and they called it Vickerstown. After A-class, we built B-class, C-class, then D, each a bit bigger and better than the class previously.
Then, in 1914, in a far-off land, the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand, which marked the start of the First World War, and the Admiralty once again came knocking on the shipyard door. Britain needed new submarines. Britain needed Barrow. By 1915, there were many submarine orders to fill. So came the then First Lord of the Admiralty, Winston Churchill. It was all hands on deck, every man on a mission. But Vickers needed more engineers and workers to produce boats and ammunition. The war created thousands of jobs for the yard, too many for Barrow's population. And so the war brought new faces to the town. The war brought mass migration. Scottish, Irish and Welsh workers all came to Barrow from miles around. Munitions girls came from all over the north to enroll in the shell shops of our shipyard town. As the bombs fell in Europe, Barrow's population did explode. 82,000 would eventually call Barrow their home. They built 6 E-class, 4 V-class, G8 to G13, classes H, K, L, M and R. Barrow became known as the nursery of submarines. Extraordinary things were being built by ordinary people on their home turf, creating an industry that success was essential for the town's economic and social worth. So when the war ended in 1918, after Barrow had produced 48 submarines, peacetime in Europe brought an eerie quiet to the shipyard. With 20,000 men out of work, life got hard. Birds were seen nesting in the shipyard cranes. Barefooted children begged for bread at the dock gates. The 1920s were hunger marches and the Wall Street crash, walking the breadline and running out of cash. Rumours were rife as production froze. Vickers publicly denied that the shipyard would close, but Barrow's reputation for building the world's best submersible boats would be the life jacket that kept the shipyard afloat. In 1925, the yard laid its first submarine keels for 6 years. HMAS Oxley and Otway for the Royal Australian Navy would go to allay some fears, and for our Royal Navy, HMS Osiris, Oswald and Otis, the O-class launches would keep people hopeful. Overseas orders from Chile, Portugal and Estonia were made, which would keep production going into the following decade. In 1936, Hindenburg, the Nazi passenger airship, was seen flying low under Barrow skies, an awe-inspiring sight for Barrovian witnesses who couldn't believe their eyes. The name and swastika could be seen from the ground due to how low that it was flying. From the sea, it flew directly over the shipyard, so many believe that it was spying.
The men on the subs wave their flat caps as those on the shore wave their top hats. A chorus of hip hip hooray for another 2 warships launched on the same day. In a silhouette hanging off the gantry, we see 3 men, one waving his hand, his hat, his hammer. What part did they play? The how, why and when? As the music plays Rule Britannia, there's a mix of pride, jubilation and fear. There's the feeling something is coming. There's the feeling something is near.
This morning, the British ambassador in Berlin handed the German government a final note stating that unless we heard from them by 11 o'clock, that they were prepared at once to withdraw their troops from Poland, a state of war would exist between us. I have to tell you now that no such undertaking has been received, and that consequently this country is at war with Germany.
Barrow's shipbuilding prowess made the yard a key target for German bombs, and so our town took several hits in the Blitz of April and May 1941. They broke our houses and broke our streets. Barrow Central Railway Station was gone. Now Barrovians became the living embodiment of keep calm and carry on. Because despite the loss of 80 lives and 11,000 houses, the Luftwaffe bomb's terrible cost, on the vast slipways of Vickers Shipyard that year, not a day of work was lost. Wartime Barrovians' resilience and spirit would pull the Navy and Great Britain through. From 1941 to 44, Barrow produced boats each month at an average of 2. S, T, U and V-class subs made up the majority of the Navy's wartime fleet. 84 Barrow-built subs would contribute to the Nazis' defeat. Triton to Trusty, Turbulent to Tally-Ho, Tantalus to Terrapin, Thorough to Teredo. 28 T-class were built right here in Barrow. Of the U-class subs, Barrow built 39, the first of class being HMS Undine. In the 6 years of war, we built 112 submarines with hard work, determination, whatever it took, by any means. Out of the ashes of World War II, a brave new world would rise and enter a Cold War between the Soviet Union and the USA and its respective allies. It was mostly a psychological war, fought over differing ideologies. Its battles were fought less in the trenches, but by inventing new technologies. And so for the shipyard, the search for the next class of submarines commenced. Amidst a Cold War arms race, it was time to experiment.
Explorer and Excalibur launched 1954-1955. Nicknamed the Blondies for the hydrogen peroxide used to keep the engine alive. Built purely to assess speed, these unarmed experimental submarines were fast, but their fuel was highly unstable, explosive, far too dangerous to last. Then there was the X-class known as the midget submarines. Minnow, sprat, shrimp and stickleback, designed to enter an enemy harbour undetected, deliver nuclear mines to attack. The porpoise class, porpoise, rorqual and narwhal, like their aquatic mammal names, were able to stay submerged to patrol for days and weeks at a time, the first operational submarines accepted into service by the Royal Navy since the war times. From the silent but deadly midgets to patrol subs came the class of Oberon, Orpheus, Olympus, Osiris, and later 3 more for the Brazilian Navy were built and sent on. Many who worked on them knew everything they were capable of and felt this class was the finest of its type at that time in the world yet to pass. But the future of the yard lay in another direction. After Operation Hurricane hit like a storm, Britain became a nuclear power, and with that, a new kind of submarine was born.
Here in Barrow-in-Furness, under clearing skies, is the black, bulky hull of Britain's first atomic submarine. A strange new shape, a break with the past, the beginning of a new chapter in the history of the Royal Navy. And to this new craft comes the royal party. Her Majesty...
Barrovians lined the streets, beaming with pride, as the red carpet was rolled out on the dockside. Our monarch came to town to launch the shipyard's latest feat. Her Majesty's ship Dreadnought would join the Royal Navy fleet.
I name this ship Dreadnought. May God bless her and all who serve in her.
3 cheers for Her Majesty the Queen and Dreadnought. Hip, hip, hip.
She plunged into the sea and onto the world stage, and so did mark the beginning of Britain's nuclear age. Vickers and Barrow had constructed one of the most advanced submarines in the world for its time, a sign of things to come. With the first nuclear-powered attack submarine launched and commissioned, the line of succession had now begun. HMS Dreadnought was first to take the atomic throne. She was a half-British, half-American submarine in a class of her own. A Vickers-built hull fitted with a US reactor, a fact that would become a significant factor, as before S-101 even hit the Ramsden dock water, the Admiralty contacted Vickers and the first all-British nuke submarine was ordered. HMS Valiant launched from the Vickers slipways on December 3rd, 1963. She was our first all-British nuclear-powered submarine, followed by HMS Warspite, the second of the Valiant class. The Hunter-Killer twin sisters were the yard's latest unprecedented achievement, but by no means the last. Britain's nuclear deterrent had been deployed from the air by V-bomber squadrons since the mid-50s. But when the Soviets developed surface-to-air missiles, they exposed the V-bombers' vulnerabilities. So the decision was made to move the nuclear deterrent into the sea, which presented the yard with its most difficult challenge yet to be.
Each Polaris submarine is costing the nation £50 million. For this kind of money, the shipbuilders and the Ministry of Defence have to provide maximum assurance.
The building of nuclear submarines is a very complex operation involving new materials and new skills. These submarines have to operate under extremely arduous conditions, and it is necessary for us to satisfy the Ministry of Defence that we are building the boats to the specification and the drawings, and that they have the maximum assurance with regard to safety and overall operating efficiency.
But when the Admiralty comes calling with the latest impossible endeavour, time and again, Barrow's Shipyard would deliver.
The young sea cadets nervously stand to attention as the Queen Mother came into sight, because despite the rough seas and grey clouds, the future in Barrow that day looked bright. A young woman curtsies while presenting a bouquet of flowers in what was a proud moment for all at the dockyard. As the bottle of champagne smashed against Resolution, cheers erupted from all of those who worked hard. The crew waved one last goodbye before they would be submerged for 2 months at a time. Our first nuclear deterrent submarine crashing deep into Walney seas, looking in her prime.
Armed with Polaris ballistic missiles, SSBN-01 set a precedent. Commissioned in 1967, it began the UK's continuous at-sea deterrent. HMS Resolution was followed off the Vickers slipway by HMS Repulse the following year. Along with HMS Renown and Revenge built at Camel Laird, the 4 Resolution-class submarines made our Royal Navy a force to revere. With the Polaris submarines all but complete, Barrow got to work on the next hunter-killers that would join the Royal Navy fleet.
Barrow-in-Furness. There she stood on the stocks, a great new A-sub about to be named after a great man. HMS Churchill is the Royal Navy's 4th nuclear-powered fleet submarine.
HMS Churchill was the first of this new and improved Valiant class, of which there were 3. With upgraded sonar and motor cooling systems, Churchill-class subs were the quietest and stealthiest submarines yet to meet the sea. Second of class, HMS Conqueror was built at Camel Laird in 1969. It would be the last submarine to be built there for quite some time, after Managing Director Sir Leonard Redshaw got commitment from the MOD that Vickers Barrow Yard would be the sole provider of submarines in the country. Third of class, HMS Courageous was Vickers and Barrow's next contribution. Its construction, the final act of the 1960s nuclear-powered revolution. Classes Dreadnought, Valiant, Churchill, and the first class of nuclear deterrent submarines, Resolution, heralded the beginning, but by no means the end, of the nuclear submarine's evolution.
Barrow Island used to be a soggy patch of marshland, but look at it now. Iron, steel, shipbuilding. For 100 years, these yards have launched men of war. Dreadnoughts, battle cruisers, aircraft carriers. Wars and rumours of wars kept Barrow happy and glorious. But now it's only the odd nuclear submarine, a frigate now and then.
The wartime days of Barrow producing over 100 submarines in half a decade were long gone. Playing hide and seek with Cold War adversaries meant the MOD wanted quality over quantity. And that's how it stayed from this point on. The 1970s saw Vickers add a new class of superboat to the Royal Navy line. So complex were these machines, the first of class took almost 8 years to design. This new Swiftsure class was faster, quieter, able to dive deeper than ever before. Essential capabilities to protect us against the harsh elements of the Cold War. HMS Swiftsure, Sovereign and Superb were launched by 1974. Then Sceptre, Spartan, Splendid make 6 hunter-killers in the class of Swiftsure. The 70s also saw Barrow complete submarine orders for Israel and Brazil. Shipbuilders to the world, that we were still. As a young man waved goodbye to HMS Manchester in November 1980, Barrow bid farewell to building anything other than submarines. Submarine orders were now the town's lifeblood, so when the Admiralty ordered a new class of 7 SSN submarines, times in Barrow were good. HMS Trafalgar and HMS Turbulent were launched in 1981 and 1982, with 5 more Trafalgar-class to be constructed. There was plenty of work to do. Around this time, the order for the next class of nuclear deterrent submarines was made, which would secure jobs for the Yard's workforce through to the next decade. But before any work on this new Vanguard class could get done, there were several challenges for the Yard to overcome. Not everyone was happy about the prospect of this new Trident missile submarine programme. The Campaign for Nuclear Disarmament protested Trident outside the Yard in 1984. A silent and poignant mass protest, hundreds of bodies lying on the floor. They called it a die-in, making a statement by pretending they were dead. Despite the opposition, the Trident plan was still going ahead.
We must, I believe, have an independent nuclear deterrent in this country. The alternative is if you don't have one yourself, you rely on someone else's umbrella. Either we have these weapons, or we leave them totally in the hands of the potential aggressor.
Secrecy was now paramount with the Cold War at its peak. We could no longer construct subs out in the open for all the world to see. A very big building was needed, a building with very big doors, as Trident submarines would be much bigger than any submarine before. The new warship build facility would be built upon reclaimed land. The developers pumped in 2.4 million tonnes of Roosecote sand. The steel frame structure would be 260 metres long and 58 metres wide, a big enough space to fit 5 submarines inside. Barrow's biggest ever building, a ground scraper, 51 metres tall. The new addition to the Barrow skyline was named the Devonshire Dock Hall. The DDH, for short, was where the world's most advanced submarines would be made. On September 3rd, 1986, the then Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher officially opened its doors and Vanguard's keel was laid. The visit of Mrs. Thatcher to our town was emblematic of how important Barrow and its shipyard was to the defence of the UK. From inside the giant walls of Maggie's farm, the Trident programme got underway.
I name this submarine Torbay. May God bless her and all who sail in her.
Here's the fleet submarine Torbay on her launch day, a Royal Navy Trafalgar-class nuclear-powered hunter-killer displacing about 5,000 tons.
The 1985 launch of HMS Torbay was one of the last dynamic launches down the slipways. The Barrovian tradition of watching subs crash into the Walney Channel would soon be bygone days. Boats would be carefully lowered into the Devonshire dock by the 108 electric winches of a brand new £50 million piece of kit, a 162-metre-long synchronised shiplift.
Completed boats will emerge onto the shiplift for lowering gently into Devonshire dock. The drama of traditional dynamic launches will have gone, replaced by the benefits that new technology will confer.
Despite the drama coming to an end with the very last traditional dynamic launch of HMS Talent, there was a much bigger drama about to begin on the continent. The fall of the Berlin Wall on the 9th of November 1989 signalled the end of the Cold War, a jubilant time for Europe, but not the shipyard workers to be shown the exit door. After the wall tumbled, so did employee numbers, falling from 14,000 to 5,000 over the following 10 years. But the dissolution of the Soviet Union raised questions no one could yet answer. Did we still need a nuclear deterrent? What would happen to Russia's nuclear arsenal? No one really knew the future for Barrow or what this really meant. But one certainty remained. The shipyard's fate was still tied to global events.
Lord Chalfont referred to the great changes that are taking place in the world. And they are changes that will impinge on our defence planning. But in the nuclear field, It's true to say that there may never have been a more dangerous time when the largest nuclear power in the world is disintegrating, when the nuclear weapons will be, with the best will in the world, still with us in Russia in 10, 15 years' time. So vast is the scale of that arsenal and no matter.
Despite redundancies and uncertainties, the population of Barrow remained steady and the shipyard carried on working through the 90s. Those who remained constructed Britain's next nuclear deterrent submarines, at the time the largest ever to be built for the Royal Navy.
Rolling out in a minute across this dock, on time, to cost, as promised those years ago. And I take this opportunity to pay my tribute to all those who have played their part in this. You can look back with pride on what you have achieved. Look forward to the achievement as we see on this same ship lift in the years ahead roll out the second, third and fourth boat. Everybody can take pride in what they have done. And I now look and invite him to roll out and start to take its rightful place as the cornerstone of our freedom and security from threat in the years ahead.
Traditionally, the naming of a boat had always been done just before its launch down the slipway. In the modern era of the shiplift, the naming could be done on another day. In May 1992, Diana, Princess of Wales, visited Barrow for the Vanguard naming ceremony. Thousands came out to see the People's Princess, as she was loved by many. Princess Diana toured the yard and spoke with many well-wishers, who would later happily reminisce. The princess was presented with a traditional bouquet and an unofficial posy from a 4-year-old girl called Laura, who gave the princess a kiss. The royal party made its way down to the Windy quayside where, much to the delight of everyone in the shipyard, the princess pressed a button to open the 16 missile tube hatches, spelling the name Vanguard. The Princess of Wales returned to Barrow for Vanguard's commissioning in 1993, and the first Trident submarine was ready to join the UK's nuclear deterrent in the sea.
HMS Victorious, HMS Vigilant, HMS Vengeance were launched by September 1998, when Barrow waved goodbye to the big subs, and the yard once again awaited its fate. The 90s saw the yard change hands a couple of times, from VSEL to GEC Marconi in 1995. GEC Marconi merged with British Aerospace to form a new company, BAE Systems, in 1999. A new company for a new millennium and a new era of submarine building for Barrow. The first challenge for BAE Systems was to produce the next generation of nuclear attack submarines to replace the Trafalgar-class subs. And so, exactly 100 years after the keel was laid of the first Royal Navy submarine, HMS Holland I, first of class HMS Astute's keel was laid down on the 31st of January 2001. Once designed on paper by the pencils of 100 draftsmen, now it was the clicks on computer design software that would create the plan. HMS Astute was the first submarine to be designed on CAD for BAE, so the learning curve caused delays. But new challenges and new ways of doing things never stopped its progress before. The yard always finds a way. A crowd of 10,000 Barrovians came out to witness the birth of a submarine with capabilities to rival any on the Earth. The largest, most able attack submarine that the Royal Navy has operated, according to BAE. And on June the 8th, 2007, the then Duchess of Cornwall launched her for all the world to see.
I named the ship Astute. May God bless her and all who sail it.
HMS Astute can circumnavigate the globe for 25 years with its Rolls-Royce PWR2, limited only by the food it can carry for its 98-strong crew. First of class HMS Astute would lead the way, then Ambush, Artful, Audacious, Anson, Agamemnon and Agincourt would all have their days.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's fantastic to be here in Barrow, which is the crucible of British marine engineering, of course, and the historic, vast maternity ward of these steel leviathans, the policemen of the world, gathering intelligence, protecting our sea lanes, cruising up behind you so silently you don't even know it's there, and invisibly helping to create that force field around us that has warded off attack on NATO countries for 80 years, keeping safe 1 billion people around the world. That is what this machine does. Some people will continue to insist that this is a weapon of war. I tell you that she is a guarantor of peace. And in this uncertain world, we need that guarantee more than ever.
Today, the home of British submarine building looks to the next projects on the horizon. In an uncertain world, our friends across oceans have asked us to stand by them. The AUKUS partnership between Australia, the UK and the US means Barrow will support Australia in developing a new generation of Australian nuclear-powered submarines. The countries will exchange people and ideas overseas as Barrow's global influence grows by exporting its submarine building expertise. And as the Vanguard class subs near the end of their service, Barrow will build the next nuclear deterrent to keep us safe from below the surface. Dreadnought, Valiant and Warspite will be the names carried by the first three, a nod to the very first British nuclear submarines we built in the 1960s. The fourth boat, named King George VI, will complete our crowning glory. Our shipyard town continues to tell a Barrow-Built Submarine Story. In our small northern town, nestled by the sea, Barrow is where submarine building will continue to be. From the Nordenfelds to Dreadnought to Valiant and Warspite, our historical voyage continues on to new horizons that shine so bright. We've had our struggles and our triumphs, and after everything we've been through, we never give up, we never give in, and that's all down to you. To the welders, fitters, plumbers, platers and the shipwrights of yesterday, this is your life's work, this is your story, and so we'd like to say, to the dreamers, the designers, to the doers of the past, a legacy has been built with foundations made to last. To the fathers, the sons, the grandsons and now granddaughters, skills and trades passed through generations to the boats that protect our waters. From the shipyard buzzer to the army of pushbikes to the wave of flat caps from the slipways, the sights and sounds of the yard are always changing, but some things remain the same. We launch our submarines to keep peace in the world, to deter catastrophe, a gift to the nation from the people of this town, our submarine building family. And lastly, to the next generation of our shipyard town, how will you play your part? What are you going to do? We've come to the end of this film, but for Barrow, it's a new beginning. The next chapter is up to you.